So this afternoon, SLED put out a release that they are opening a criminal investigation into Gloria Satterfield's death. It was first reported she tripped and fell at their estate. She had been a housekeeper for the Murdaughs for many years. And we also learned today that Satterfield's kids are suing your client, Alex Murdaugh, saying that there was a settlement, $500,000 reached after their mom's death, and that your client admitted fault in that, but they say they never got the money. What's your client's involvement in Gloria Satterfield's death?
Well, first of all, he has no involvement in Gloria Satterfield's death. The insurance company that paid the money did an investigation and determined it was an accident, that she tripped and fell down the stairs. And that was a case that was not litigated, but examined thoroughly by the insurance company. Wouldn't have paid the money if they didn't think it was owed. So, I mean, these are rumors and innuendos, and maybe SLED feels like they've got to chase every rabbit that's out there, but I think this is going to be a huge dead end.
Now, in that lawsuit, they said that Alex admitted he was at fault when they made this deal with their attorney who he, chose for them. And SLED says that the coroner looked at this, and we have the letter from the coroner to SLED saying that they listed her death as natural at the time, and it's inconsistent with what they have uncovered, and that SLED said they're relaunching this criminal investigation due to new evidence. Do you know what that could be? What's happened? Has Alex said anything?
No, I have no idea what that is. And again, I think what this distracts from is, and what Alec would like investigated is, who murdered his wife and his son. And that case is now 90 days old. No closer to closure now than it was 90 days ago. Look, SLED's got the right to investigate anything they want. That's what they're there for. I just believe that that will be not fruitful in terms of determining any foul play whatsoever.
And you go back to Paul and Maggie's death, and what's, I think, startling to a lot of people is, yeah, you have that his wife and son were killed on their property, but then you also have now, Gloria Satterfield's death, and then you have this Stephen Smith's death that SLED said they reopened that case due to evidence they found while investigating Alex's wife and son. What's your response when people say, look, you have, 5, possibly 6 deaths surrounding your client as of this afternoon?
I don't know what those 5 or 6 deaths would be. There's, Maggie and Paul. There's no allegation that Alex was involved in any way with the death of the Smith boy. There's no allegation. I don't think Alex was even home when the Satterfield woman fell down the stairs. So I don't know how to be involved in that death. The other death would be Mallory Beach, the boat accident in which Paul was charged. Obviously, Alex had nothing to do with that. I mean, this is just smoke and mirrors. If people want to look at it, I think SLED feels compelled to look under every bush, scrub any prior allegations, so there's no questions unanswered. But I think the Gloria Satterfield, based on what I've seen and I know, will turn out to be exactly what it was. When the insurance company paid the money they paid, they determined it was an accident. If it was intentional, they wouldn't pay the money.
So I've seen some articles out there about Paul and Maggie's death, the investigation underway. You mentioned we're 90 days out. Do you think that, this new evidence that's come to light, that you said today your client did have a drug problem for the last, you said, 20 years. What's the motive here? What do you think happened to them? I mean, he, for some reason, went to that property that night, that late night. He found his wife and he found his son murdered, shot to death.
When you say went to that property, that's where he lived. I mean, he went to his home and went in his house and looked for his wife and son. They weren't there. He drove down to where the dog pens are and found them dead. So there's nothing suspicious about him being at the property. That's where he lived. That's where he slept every night with Maggie and Paul. I represented Paul for almost 2 years on the boat case. I was with Maggie and Alec and Paul on a number of occasions. All I ever saw between Maggie and Paul and Alec was affection. All I saw was concern by each one of them about each other. There was never anything that indicated to me there was anything untoward going on or any antagonism between any of them. And again, I spent almost 2 years with them.
So as a representative of this family, where is this investigation going? Because again, there hasn't been much released, but it seems that you said you guys might have a better idea of what happened to them or a possible suspect in the killing.
We're conducting an independent investigation at the result of, and I don't represent the family, I represent Alex Murdaugh. And at his request, we've initiated, hired some private detectives, getting people interviewed and trying to focus on, we think there's one or two people who could be, I'm not saying they are, could be involved in the deaths of Maggie and Paul, and we're working on that.
Okay, so we have that investigation that's been going on. And then, of course, September 4th rolls around, and I think shock went through the state when they heard your client had been shot. We now learn, according to SLED, that he is accused of setting this whole thing up for his son Buster to get that $10 million life insurance policy. Why did your client feel that he needed to take his own life at that point?
Well, obviously he would at that point had stopped taking the oxy. He was becoming extremely depressed. Jim Griffin, who is working with me representing Alec, met with him at probably 10 o'clock that morning. And he indicated he was having a tough time at that time. He had, the day before, the law firm had alleged that a large amount of money was missing, that Alec had taken it. I'm not saying that's true or not true, but that allegation had been made. And I think he got massively depressed. He felt that if he committed suicide, the policy would not pay. It would have. Any suicide exclusion is not valid after 2 years. He had the policy for much longer than that. But the point is, he was ready, as he put it to me, not to be here anymore. He was suicidal, didn't want to kill himself and lose that insurance coverage for Buster. So he went to his drug dealer and asked him to shoot him. And within 30 minutes, his drug dealer shot him in the head. So, it's not a pretty picture. It's bizarre that Alex gotten out of detox. He's in rehab now, and I think we're making progress in getting him back to a sober, rational state.
Now, did your client pay this Smith guy, Curtis Smith, to carry out this? And obviously, was it a botched, or did they back out at the last minute? I mean, what happened on that road September 4th?
It was botched. He shot him in the head. I guess he saw it, the bullet hit his head, blood spray. Alex went down. I think he thought he'd shot him in the head and he was dead.
And then we have that he was flown out from that scene, went to a hospital, and was released. And then we learned he checked into rehab, and then the allegation of money missing from this law firm from PMPED. How much money are we talking about here? Because I understand having, your wife and your son, killed is a big thing. But I mean, are we talking millions here? If he had a 20-year addiction and then to, go to the point of taking your own life?
We don't know.
So there's been no money put out there as far as what the firm thinks they're missing?
No, they're doing audits. It's going to take a while. It's only been a week.
And at this point, in the affidavits that we got last night from SLED, it lists right point blank says co-defendant Richard Alexander Murdaugh. What are we looking at as far as when he is going to be arrested? Are you guys working a negotiation here with SLED to turn himself in? Did he go to rehab to avoid being arrested?
He's turning himself in tomorrow.
So you can confirm that Mr. Murdaugh will be in custody tomorrow?
Absolutely. He's got a bond hearing tomorrow afternoon.
And what charges are you hearing that he is going to be facing?
Conspiracy to commit insurance fraud, filing a false police statement, and insurance fraud, filing false police statement, and one other minor charge. I don't know what it is. I can't remember what it is.
And following up on that, so now that we know he is going to be charged with similar crimes as Mr. Smith, I noticed in this, okay, so
now Mr. Smith was charged with shooting, assault with intent to kill, much more serious offenses. He was charged with the whole panoply of charges, not that Alex won't be charged with.
As soon as he was released and went to rehab and you guys started talking, did Murdaugh admit right away that this is what happened? I was behind this? Because I know it was about 9 days in between the time that he was shot and then, of course, this release coming out late last night.
Well, he went to detox. He was available to talk to us on Monday. He's out of state at this detox facility. Jim Griffin and I went there, met with him. He was 100% truthful, wanted immediately to let SLED know, because SLED's investigating what they think is a drive-by shooting. And he said specifically, I need to stop them from wasting their time so they can put resources on solving the murders of Maggie and Paul. So we put him on the phone with SLED, unsolicited. They didn't know we were calling. And he laid out exactly what happened on the 4th, and specifically who did what, where they met, how. And, the guy that shot him was his drug dealer, the guy that sold him all the drugs. So he met him on the side of the road, asked him to do it, and 30 minutes later, he shot him in the head. No hesitancy whatsoever.
And, Dick,
cold. Cold, yeah.
I know addiction it's hard. It's hard for families. So, there's no way of getting around that. But did his boys, did they know that he's been addicted to this opioid, if that's all he's been addicted to for the last 20 years? Did anybody know outside of Mr. Murdaugh?
I don't know what other people, I can't tell you what other people knew. I know my conversation's been with Alex. I know what he knew.
And did they have any idea that any of that money was missing prior to all of this unfolding in June?
Again, I don't know. You'd have to talk to the law firm. I don't know.
And I guess you could see where I'm coming from just with these questions, because this is the most bizarre events that kind of unfolded here, Dick. I mean, it started with the murders of his wife and son, and then, SLED came out and said that, while they're investigating, evidence turned up from Stephen Smith's case. And then, following that, 2 months later, you have this attempted, hire for murder-suicide that he tried to get the insurance policy. And then now we have today Gloria Satterfield's deaths being, reopened as a criminal investigation. I think so many people are looking at this, and it's bizarre to have one person tied, being talked about around all of these deaths. I mean, you have to admit that if it's not, something behind it, it's pretty coincidental. It's a crazy coincidence.
I'm a lawyer. I don't have to admit anything.
That's fair.
But look, it began with the death of Mallory Beach in the boat accident. When Paul was arrested on that, there was huge tumult in Hampton County in the Low Country that he was going to get out of it. Now, Jim Griffin and I, developed a defense. We think we could have had him acquitted on that, but before we could try the case, he was killed. But the sentiment in the community was he was going to get out of it, and there was a tremendous amount of resentment down there against him. He came back to the University of South Carolina. He had people pulling up in cars, threatening him, yelling at him. So, it may be tied to that. I'm not accusing anybody involved with the Beach family or those folks, but somebody just might have decided to be a little vigilante on it. That's a theory. It could have been one of those folks. There are a number of other theories that are out there. They're not, all of which are consistent with Alex's innocence. As to the Smith, I've never heard of, seen any shred of evidence that Alex Murdaugh was involved in the death of that young man. So so look at them individually, not Stephen Smith, not the death of Mallory Beach, not Maggie and Paul. There's no credible evidence there's no forensic evidence, there's no eyewitnesses, there's nothing to indicate that he was involved. Matter of fact, everything is inconsistent with his having committed those murders. The latest development with the shooting in the head, that was a suicide attempt. And given he's lost, and by the way, the same week his wife and son were murdered, his father, who was a friend of mine, Randolph Murdaugh, the solicitor down there, died of cancer. they're murdered on Tuesday night. He actually saw Alec on Wednesday or Thursday. He went home 2 hours later, succumbed to his cancer. So, I mean, this guy's been through what would break most people. And if in fact he became despondent in a dark, dark place and decided to end it all, I mean, it's, I don't know that, I'm not saying we shouldn't blame him, but certainly it's understandable.